All right, I want to be very direct with you. I'm an oncologist, and for nearly 30 years, my focus has been on how our bodies fight back against disease. So take a second. Think about what you actually ate this week. Not what you told yourself you'd eat, but what really went into your body. Because what we're about to go over, it might just be the most important nutrition information you hear all year.
So let's just jump right in with the big question. Are microscopic cancers forming inside your body right now?
And the answer isn't maybe or they could be. The answer is an absolute yes. They are forming. Right now. And this isn't some scare tactic. This is just established biological fact.
And look, this data comes from a really sobering place. Autopsies of people who died in accidents. People who had no idea they had any kind of cancer. And what scientists found is just staggering. 40% of women in their 40s, they already had microscopic breast cancer. 50% of men in their 50s, microscopic prostate cancer. And get this, by the time we hit our 70s, almost 70% of us are walking around with microscopic thyroid cancer.
So you see, the point isn't to worry about whether cancer is forming. It is. The real question, the one that actually matters, is this. Does your body have the power to stop it from becoming a problem? And the answer to that, thank goodness, is yes.
See, your body has three incredible built-in defense systems that control cancer. You can think of them as the gatekeepers of your health. And every single day, what you choose to eat either strengthens them or tears them down. First up, you've got your immune surveillance. These are your natural killer cells, and they're like a 24/7 security patrol, hunting down and taking out abnormal cells. Second, there's inflammation control. Now, a little bit of inflammation is good for healing, but chronic, low-level inflammation, that's like pouring fertilizer on these microscopic cancers. And the third system, well, this one's called anti-angiogenesis. It's your body's ability to starve a tumor by cutting off its blood supply.
Now that third one, anti-angiogenesis, is the one most people have never even heard of, and it's absolutely crucial. A cancer literally can't grow any bigger than the tip of a ballpoint pen unless it gets its own private blood supply. It has to hijack your body's systems and trick it into building new blood vessels just to feed itself. That whole process is called angiogenesis. And to really understand what's at stake here, look at this number. Once a tumor establishes that blood supply, it can just explode. We're talking about growing 16,000 times larger in just 2 weeks. That right there is the tipping point. It's the difference between a harmless little speck and a life-threatening tumor. But the good news is your body has the power to stop this.
So how do we empower these defenses? Well, the answer is right in your kitchen. We can literally use food as a kind of pharmacy to activate all three of these systems. So let's get practical and look at 5 specific, science-backed foods that do exactly that.
Let's start here and be honest with yourself. When was the last time you drank green tea? And I don't mean a cup you had last month. I mean as a consistent daily part of your routine.
There's a compound in green tea, it's called ECGC, and it is an absolute powerhouse. It directly strengthens your immune defense. In fact, one study found that drinking it daily boosted the activity of those natural killer cells, your cancer-hunting security team, by an incredible 47% in older adults. At the same time, it slashed their inflammation.
So the effective dose is about 2 to 3 cups a day, but how you make it is so important. You want to heat the water to about 175 degrees Fahrenheit. A simple way to do that is just to let boiling water cool off for about 3 minutes before you pour. Then let it steep for 5 full minutes. And a pro tip for you, if you really want to maximize the benefit, just 1 cup of matcha gives you the power of 10 cups of regular green tea.
Now, I have to give you a really critical warning here. Never, ever pour boiling water directly over tea leaves. It literally destroys the very compounds you're trying to get. And there's a second risk. Studies have shown that consistently drinking any liquid that hot, above 149 degrees, actually increases your risk for esophageal cancer.
Okay, on to our second food. A quick question for you. When you cook broccoli, what do you do with the stalk? Do you just chop it off and throw it away?
If you do, you're literally throwing away the medicine.
The stalk has double the amount of a powerful compound called sulforaphane compared to the little green florets. And what does sulforaphane do? It's a potent anti-angiogenic. It helps your body cut off the blood supply to tumors. And if you want an even bigger punch, get this. Broccoli sprouts have 100 times more sulforaphane than the mature plant.
Researchers at Johns Hopkins found that just a half a cup of those sprouts every day slashed markers for DNA damage, a huge red flag for cancer, by 60%. So, the dose to aim for is about 1 cup of chopped broccoli, making sure to include that stalk, or just that half cup of sprouts daily. And here comes another really important warning. Broccoli is rich in vitamin K. So if you are on a blood thinner, like warfarin, you absolutely must talk to your doctor before you start eating a lot more of it. All right, for our third food, let me ask you this. Have you ever thought that a simple, delicious tropical fruit could actually be working to protect your lung tissue?
Well, that beautiful orange color in a papaya comes from something called beta-cryptoxanthin. And it turns out this compound actually concentrates itself inside our lungs. A huge Harvard study that followed 70,000 women found that those who ate the most of it had a 31% lower risk of lung cancer. And here's the kicker. That protection held true even for former smokers.
But please, hear this warning loud and clear. As a general rule, you need to stay away from fruit juice. When you strip out all the fiber, you're basically left with a glass of concentrated sugar. That causes an inflammatory spike in your insulin that can completely cancel out all the good stuff. So always eat the whole fruit. Now, there is one very specific, research-backed exception, and we'll get to that in just a moment. Okay, on to number 4. I want you to look at this. Have you ever seen a potato that can selectively hunt down and kill the very cancer stem cells that are responsible for a cancer coming back after treatment? Well, these purple potatoes get their amazing color from anthocyanins. And astonishingly, studies show these compounds can target and destroy cancer stem cells while leaving healthy cells completely alone. But here's a pro tip to really boost your body's inflammation control. Cook them and then let them cool completely in the refrigerator. This process creates something called resistant starch, which is a prebiotic that feeds the good bacteria in your gut, helping lower inflammation all over your body. And that brings us to our 5th and final food. And this is that one exception I mentioned earlier. What if I told you that one specific glass of juice, taken each night, has been shown in clinical trials to slow down a cancer's growth, not by weeks, not by months, but potentially by years? In a truly landmark study out of UCLA, men who had recurring prostate cancer drank 8 ounces of 100% pomegranate juice every day. The results were just stunning. They measured the speed of the cancer's growth by how long it took for the PSA marker to double. Before the juice, the average was 15 months. After, it stretched all the way to 54 months. You see, in this one specific case, the anti-angiogenic compounds are so potent and concentrated in the juice that the benefits were shown to outweigh the risks from the natural sugar. It was literally starving tumors of their blood supply. You know, data and charts are one thing, but I want to share a quick story about a patient of mine, Robert. This is where the science really hits home. Robert is 64, lives out in Phoenix. He came to see me with a rising PSA level and a very scary family history of prostate cancer. After about 14 months of really sticking to a protocol that included these foods, his PSA stopped rising. It just stabilized. His urologist was floored, called the result unexpected. So I asked Robert what was the key, and what he told me has stuck with me ever since. He said, "Doc, the consistency, that was the hardest part, but that's exactly where the medicine is."
So, now you have the knowledge. You understand that your body has 3 powerful innate defense systems against cancer. And you know 5 specific foods that can switch them on.
But I have to end with what is by far my most important warning. This is not a replacement for conventional cancer treatment. It is an enhancement. If you have a cancer diagnosis, your medical team absolutely has to be part of this conversation. They need to know everything you are doing.
So really, the only question left is, what are you going to do with this information? You are not helpless in this fight. You have far more control than you might think. So start today. Just 1 cup of green tea, 1 serving of broccoli with the stalk. The biology is on your side.
In our last explainer, we talked all about the amazing foods that power up your body's cancer defenses. But that's only half the battle. Because while adding all the good stuff is absolutely crucial, what you take out of your diet might be even more important. So today, we're going to flip the script and look at the common, everyday foods that could be silently fueling the very thing we're all trying to fight.
This quote right here, it just gets right to the heart of it all, doesn't it? This isn't just some catchy phrase. It's the fundamental biochemistry of how your body works. Every single meal sends a signal to your cells, and that signal is never, ever neutral.
After looking at almost 3 decades of clinical research in cancer prevention, a really clear pattern has emerged. When you look at the diets of patients who were otherwise fit and active, the same ordinary foods pop up, again and again. We're talking about foods that we're often told are fine, foods probably sitting in your kitchen right now, that were creating a pro-cancer environment at a cellular level. Let's get right into the first one. Okay, first up on the list is processed meat. We're talking about stuff like bacon, deli ham, salami, hot dogs, pepperoni. You get the idea. Basically, it's any meat that's been cured, smoked, salted, or preserved with chemical additives to make it last longer on the shelf. Now, this is the part that really stops you in your tracks. Back in 2015, the World Health Organization put processed meat in the exact same category as tobacco smoking and asbestos. That category is Group 1, and what it means is that the evidence that it causes cancer in humans is conclusive. This isn't just some fringe theory, it's the global scientific consensus after they reviewed over 800 studies. So how in the world does this happen? Well, processed meats are packed with preservatives like nitrates. When you eat them, these nitrates mix with stuff in your gut and form brand new compounds called nitrosamines. And these things, they're among the most powerful cancer-causing agents known to science. They literally attack your DNA, causing the mutations that can lead to cancer, and they fuel the chronic inflammation that helps those tiny cancers grow. And the numbers here are just stark. A huge Harvard study found that just 1 daily serving of processed meat increased the risk of death by 20%. Another analysis found that eating just 50 grams a day, we're talking 2 strips of bacon or a single hot dog, raises your risk of colorectal cancer by a staggering 18%. The numbers really do speak for themselves. All right, next up, refined vegetable oils. This is the stuff that's in almost every household, like soybean, corn, sunflower, and cottonseed oil. They are absolutely everywhere, in your salad dressings, chips, frozen meals, and they're used for cooking in pretty much most restaurants and fast food chains. For decades, they've been marketed to us as heart healthy, but what's happening at a cellular level tells a very, very different story. And this chart shows you exactly what I'm talking about. Our ancestors ate a diet with a pretty balanced 1-to-1 ratio of omega-6 to omega-3 fatty acids. But today, look at that. That ratio is completely out of whack, sitting at about 20-to-1 in favor of omega-6. Now, this isn't some minor nutritional detail. This huge imbalance is a primary driver of systemic, chronic inflammation all throughout your body. So let's break down how this actually works. First, all that extra omega-6 just gives your body the raw materials to create constant, low-grade inflammation. Second, that inflammatory environment is basically the perfect soil for cancer to take root and grow. Third, research actually shows that omega-6 fatty acids directly stimulate something called angiogenesis. That's the growth of new blood vessels that tumors need to survive and get bigger. And finally, when you cook with these unstable oils at high heat, they break down into toxic compounds called aldehydes, which damage your DNA. Okay, our third category is added sugar and refined carbohydrates, which, let's be honest, act just like sugar in the body. Think white bread, pastries, most breakfast cereals, candy, and especially sweetened drinks. Now, the problem isn't glucose itself. Your cells need it to survive. But it's the absolute flood of it we get from eating these refined forms day in and day out. So here's the crucial point you need to understand. Insulin is a powerful growth hormone. Every single time you eat sugar or refined carbs, your blood sugar spikes, and your pancreas pumps out insulin. And here's the kicker. Cancer cells have way more insulin receptors than normal cells. They are hypersensitive to insulin's message, and that message is simple: grow and divide. The link between what we eat and our hormonal environment is direct, and it's measurable. This major study found that women with the highest blood insulin levels had more than double the risk of developing breast cancer compared to women with the lowest levels. Think about that. A 2x risk driven entirely by a hormonal environment that's created by our food choices. And just look at this gap. It's huge. Health authorities recommend that women get no more than 6 teaspoons of added sugar a day and men no more than 9. But the average American, they consume 17 teaspoons. We are consistently eating nearly double the safe upper limit, creating an internal environment that is just incredibly hospitable to cancer growth. All right, now for our final 2 categories. We're going to start with one that can be a little culturally sensitive, but the biology here is crystal clear: alcohol. Let's just be really direct about this. Just like processed meat, alcohol is classified as a Group 1 carcinogen. The evidence is conclusive. When you drink alcohol, your body converts it into a toxic chemical called acetaldehyde. This compound directly damages your DNA and, at the same time, prevents your cells from repairing that damage. And, as if that's not enough, it also suppresses your immune system's natural killer cells, which are your body's first line of defense against cancer. And the risk, it starts with the very first drink and just goes up from there. Just 1 drink per day is linked to a significant increase in risk for several major cancers, including breast, esophageal, and oral cancers. When it comes to cancer risk, there is simply no documented safe level of alcohol consumption. And finally, our 5th category is ultra-processed foods, or UPFs. These aren't really food. They're industrial formulations engineered for maximum taste and profit. If it comes in a crinkly package and has an ingredient list a mile long with words you don't even recognize, it's almost certainly a UPF. So a landmark study in the British Medical Journal found that for every 10% increase of UPFs in a person's diet, their overall cancer risk jumped by 12%. And that was after adjusting for all the other factors. The food itself was driving the risk. It's like a triple threat: high in sugar, made with those refined inflammatory oils, and just loaded with chemical additives that disrupt our gut microbiome, dismantling our defenses from the inside out. Okay, I know after all of that, it's really easy to feel discouraged. But the point of this isn't fear, it's about empowerment, because you are in control. Let's look at a real-world example: a patient named Daniel. At 61, Daniel was a fit guy, but his diet was built on convenience: deli sandwiches, packaged snacks, a beer in the evening. A routine colonoscopy revealed 3 precancerous polyps. So he committed to a complete diet overhaul. He removed all 5 categories we just talked about, and the results 2 years later, they were just stunning. His follow-up colonoscopy found 0 polyps. His inflammatory markers were completely normal. He had literally changed his own biology. This right here is the key takeaway. Look, you can't change your genes and you can't change your age, but your diet is not some minor factor on the sidelines. It is central to your body's defense systems, and it is one of the most powerful levers you have direct daily control over. So here it is, all laid out, side by side. On the left, the 5 categories that dismantle your defenses, and on the right, the 5 we talked about in our last explainer that actively build them up. The foundation is actually pretty simple. Remove what feeds the cancer and add what feeds your immune system. If you do that consistently, you can fundamentally shift your body's entire internal environment. You can't change what you ate for the last 20 years, but you absolutely can change what you ate today. And today matters. The choice is yours, but now you can make it with the full picture.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about how food can build up your cancer defenses. But what if I told you there's another side to this story, an equally critical piece of the puzzle that has nothing to do with what's on your plate and everything to do with how you live? I want you to really think about this for a second. Picture 2 people. They're eating the exact same healthy, protective diet, but one of them thrives and the other doesn't.
How is that even possible? It's a question I've seen play out in the real world time and time again.
And here's the answer. It's because our diet doesn't work in a vacuum. Its power depends entirely on the body it's in, a body that's either being supported and strengthened by our daily habits or, actively sabotaged by them. And that makes all the difference.
So let's talk about these invisible defenses. Your body has this amazing three-part security system. First, there's immune surveillance. Think of them as guards on patrol, spotting threats. Then you have inflammation control, which stops the internal environment from becoming too friendly to cancer. And finally, something called anti-angiogenesis, which is just a fancy way of saying it stops tumors from building their own blood supply. But here's the crucial part. These systems aren't fixed. They're constantly being dialed up or dialed down by the signals from our daily lives.
So let's get into our first silent saboteur, sleep deprivation. And I really want you to try and reframe this. It's not just about being tired. It's about skipping critical, non-negotiable nightly maintenance on your body's most vital security systems.
And let's be really clear about what we're talking about here. This isn't about that one night you stayed up too late. We're talking about consistently getting 6 hours of sleep or less. It's when you've gotten so used to feeling drained that you start to call it your new normal. That right there, that is chronic deprivation.
Here's the biology of why this is so important. You have this critical window, roughly between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m., when your body is cranking out melatonin. And melatonin is so much more than a sleep hormone. It's a potent anti-cancer agent, it fights inflammation and stops tumors from building supply lines. But, and this is a huge but, even a little bit of light from your phone or TV can slam the brakes on that entire process. Just stops it cold.
If you're a numbers person, get ready for this one. A study from the University of Chicago found that after just 1 week of restricted sleep, the activity of your natural killer cells, your immune system's frontline assassins, plummeted by a staggering 70%. In 1 week, that is a catastrophic failure in your body's surveillance system.
The big takeaway is this. Sleep is not passive downtime. It is an active biological mission where your defenses get repaired and redeployed for the next day. Every hour of sleep you sacrifice is literally an hour that system goes unmaintained. Okay, on to our second habit, being sedentary. And there's a really key phrase here I want you to remember, independent risk factor. What that means is the damage from sitting all day happens whether you hit the gym in the morning or not. It's a completely separate and, frankly, insidious problem.
You know, this is where so many of us get it wrong. We think, hey, I did my 30-minute workout this morning, I've got a free pass for the rest of the day. But then we spend the next 14 hours at a desk. And the research is absolutely clear. You cannot offset 14 hours of inactivity with one short burst of exercise. The biology just doesn't work that way.
So what's actually going on when you sit for a long time? Well, your biggest muscles basically go to sleep. They stop producing powerful anti-cancer compounds. And at the exact same time, your blood sugar and insulin levels creep up, creating this perfect, growth-friendly environment that cancer cells absolutely love to thrive in.
But the good news here is really good news. The fix is incredibly simple. Just getting up and moving for 2 to 5 minutes every hour is enough to reverse this whole negative cascade. A short walk, a few squats, that's what we call a biologically meaningful intervention. You are actively flipping the switch back on.
All right, habit number 3, chronic stress. Now, I know this is often dismissed as just a psychological issue, something that's all in your head, but the scientific evidence is concrete. Persistent stress creates measurable, physical changes that directly sabotage your cancer defenses. It's a clear chain reaction. Constant stress keeps your primary stress hormone, cortisol, cranked up way too high. This high level of cortisol weakens your key immune cells. And, maybe most alarmingly, it directly stimulates angiogenesis. It literally helps tumors build their own blood supply. In essence, stress acts like a fertilizer for cancer.
But just as the problem is biological, so are the solutions. And these are not just vague suggestions to relax. These are evidence-based tools.
Clinical trials show that practices like mindfulness, just 10 minutes of daily meditation, or even simple deep breathing can physically lower cortisol and measurably restore your immune function.
Okay, so we've covered the big three. Now let's move to our two final and perhaps most surprising habits. These are hidden threats that quietly erode your defenses: chronic dehydration and social isolation.
Think of your lymphatic system as the highway your immune cells use to patrol your body. When you're dehydrated, that highway gets sluggish and surveillance slows down. At the same time, carcinogens become more concentrated in your bladder. A well-hydrated body, on the other hand, is one where your immune cells travel efficiently and toxins get flushed out fast.
And then there's this one, which is truly staggering. A landmark study found that social isolation increases your mortality risk by 29%. To put that in perspective, that is a risk comparable to smoking up to 15 cigarettes a day. And the mechanism is tied directly to that stress pathway we talked about. Loneliness keeps cortisol and inflammation high, which suppresses the immune system.
So how do we pull all of these pieces together into a daily defense plan? I think the best way to understand the real-world impact is through a quick story. I had a patient, Patricia, who was eating a perfect diet after her husband passed away, but her inflammatory markers were through the roof. Her immune function was terrible. Why? Because she wasn't sleeping, she was barely moving, and she was deeply lonely. Her body was listening to her grief and her inactivity, not just her diet.
And that right there is the core lesson. Your protection from cancer doesn't come from one single thing. Your defense systems are constantly listening and responding to the totality of your daily life, what you eat, what you avoid, and crucially, how you live.
So what can you do? Right now, look at this list. These aren't massive, life-altering changes. But please, don't mistake their simplicity for weakness. At a cellular level, going to bed 30 minutes earlier helps restore those natural killer cells. Drinking water before your coffee kickstarts your lymphatic system. And calling someone you care about directly counters the stress response of isolation. Each one is a powerful biological signal.
I want to leave you with this. The difference between a body with robust, active defenses and one where those defenses are compromised is real, it's measurable, and this is the most important part. It is largely within your control.
Your biology is fundamentally on your side. It is designed to protect you. The only real question left is, what message are you going to send it next? What's your first move?